Next up, the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association has ratified a new 5-year contract with the city totaling $82.3 million. The deal comes with retroactive pay bumps for the city's officers, as well as some key reforms that Mayor Michelle Wu has been pushing for since she was a candidate for mayor. While both Wu and the union are touting this as a win-win, there are some critics who've suggested the reforms may not go far enough. So what exactly is in the agreement, and what was left on the cutting room floor? Joining me to discuss is the union's president, Larry Calderone, and Yawu Miller, the former senior editor of the Bay State Banner. Thank you both for being here. Larry, the mayor made a point of highlighting in the press release that the city put out about this, that this contract was reached through negotiation rather than arbitration. Can you explain why that is significant to people who might not be familiar with how this stuff usually shakes out?
Sure. I'd be delighted to. Thank you for having me on, too, and at least getting an inside view, if you will,
Thanks for being here.
About how the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association now conducts itself and the members we represent. So I want to say thank you for having me on. Sure. So the arbitration process is run through a statewide committee called the Joint Labor Management Committee, who assist both municipalities when they're negotiating contracts that are basically stalled between municipal, fire, and police departments. It's a long, tedious process. It's fair to both sides of the table, but it does take time. So it was very important to sit down with the mayor and her team and get something that we could bring back to the men and women that I represent and have them vote to ratify it. It's a faster process. Typically, both sides make out better when you have a negotiated contract than you do at the Joint Labor Management Committee, because you have an independent arbitrator that you go in and you present your testimony and your reasons why. Of course, we're there advocating for the people we represent, and the city is doing the same on their side. And it tends to, more often than not be satisfactory to both sides. Each side gets a little bit of what they want, but each side doesn't get a little bit. So you're better off negotiating than you are.
So when you went to your members after negotiating this deal with the Wu administration, and you said to them, this is a good deal, we should take it, what did you highlight?
Actually, the whole deal. So the men and women I represent, they're very happy with the deal. They think it's fair. They think it helps policing evolve into the future, and it helps bring a new light to the services that we provide to the citizens of Boston on a daily basis. It was a landslide victory as far as the vote went, and I think that speaks for itself when it comes to how good the deal is.
A lot of different aspects of it that we'll get into or try to get into here. Yawu, you have written a lot of stories that make the case for reform inside the BPD. Does this contract that Larry says his members see as a slam dunk or a landslide victory, I can't remember which metaphor you used, does it include any reforms that you have identified over the years as especially significant or especially commendable?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the expanded list of crimes that are not subject to arbitration is something that, people have been pushing for, although there are things in there. I mean, certain categories of crime in there that aren't included in that list that are very common.
Before we get into the weeds there, just to be completely clear, I want to describe this in layperson-friendly terms. This is a list of offenses that an officer hypothetically can commit. Back in the day, before this contract, if you committed one of these violations, your discipline would be subject to the arbitration process, and now it is not. Am I summarizing that correctly?
That is correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the offenses that we're talking about here, Yawu?
Well, for instance, assault and battery to collect a loan is, that you wouldn't go to arbitration for that. You would, if the internal affairs found that to be, found that you had actually committed such a crime, that you would be out of the department. But simple assault and battery, for instance, the most common, I think, assault and battery cases, among the most common, in Boston and in the country, is in a domestic violence situation. That's still subject to arbitration. So if internal affairs deems that you are guilty of such a thing, you can still go to arbitration. And in cases of arbitration, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, most of the time officers are reinstated. So I mean, there are certain categories of crime, major categories of crime, I think, that are quite common that seem to have been excluded from the list of things that would actually get an officer out without a chance of coming back.
It's a great big list of offenses that are no longer subject to arbitration. How was that list shaped? To Yawu's point, for example, why is assault and battery not on there, but assault and battery with intent to collect a loan on there?
So my understanding of the request through the mayor's office when it comes to these charges that you see that are part of the contract are historically cases that officers have been involved in. And what we're trying to do from a union standpoint is put our money where our mouth has been. Look, there's nothing that a police officer dislikes more than a rogue police officer, someone who is involved in criminal acts. No man or woman in uniform wants to work next to a criminal. It's not who we are, it's not who we should be, and it's not what this union wants to represent. So when it came to this list of offenses that the mayor and her team were looking to add into this process, into the collective bargaining agreement, it really was a no-brainer for us.
I was going to ask you, you got ahead of me, which is great. I was going to ask you if it was a tough sell for your members to have these offenses specified that were no longer going to be subject to arbitration, but it sounds like it wasn't.
No, it was not. And if I jump ahead of you, just give me a wink, because I'm new at this. So
that's great, because I always go too slowly, and that way we might not run out of time. What about there's a couple other provisions I want to talk. One involves medical leave. Again, the press release from the city, tell me if I'm getting this right, said that ordinarily about 10% of officers are out on medical leave. That, I believe, is something that has in the past been subject to arbitration, but now it's going to involve an independent medical examiner making the call about whether a particular officer can work or not. Am I getting that right?
You are correct in that, yes.
Okay.
Now, it'll be a third opinion that will come forth. The officers have their own primary care physician. The department has a physician as well that follows up, but if those two physicians disagree, then an independent third-party physician will make that call.
Okay, and another important area that I think we should highlight, which we were talking about here before the camera started rolling, is details. Again, I'm going to try to do the, for people like me, the layperson simple take on it. There's now going to be high priority details that pay higher. Those are going to go, the first crack at those will go to members of your union.
Correct.
Stop me if I'm getting this wrong.
Nope, you're
Then there's going to be lower priority detail work, which is going to go to a wider group of people, including civilians, and there's going to be no more double booking where, for example, an officer is slated to work 4 hours at a detail, it wraps up after 2 hours, but they're paid for all 4 as they go on to work another detail. Is that a decent synopsis?
Yes, so if I just understood that last part, sorry. In more simplistic terms, I think, because you have a pretty good grasp on the public safety detail system, but essentially for anyone that's listening, watching, you cannot take another job until that clock expires. So if you're doing a 4-hour job, you can't take another job until that 4 hours has expired. Therefore, you're not getting paid for 2 jobs at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Yawu, detail reform is something that I think people have been interested in for a long time. In terms of what's possible, or what was possible when it came to reforming the way details work, how far does this contract go?
It's hard to say. What people wanted was, the department doesn't have enough officers to fill all the details. What people were pushing for last year was for civilians to be hired on as flaggers on these projects, particularly in cases where the department was unable to fill those assignments. What this does is it gives municipal police, university police, other law enforcement access to those jobs. The lowest priority is for people who are not sworn officers to have access to flagger jobs. It falls pretty far short of what people are asking for. I mean, they saw an economic opportunity. These details are lucrative. Otherwise, people wouldn't be signing up for them. But it remains to be seen how many civilians will actually get to serve in that capacity. And I think Boston is kind of an outlier in major cities requiring that somebody to be a flagger on a construction project is actually a sworn officer.
Is Yawu right about that? Is that unusual?
When you say is he right about it, I think I lost track of what he was saying. Are you saying that
specifically about Boston being an outlier, requiring that on most major construction projects the flagger is, or the detail worker is a police officer?
It's hard for me to speak about what happens throughout the entire Commonwealth, of course, but my understanding is police officers throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are required by any town or city municipal ordinance that requires them to be there for public safety. But I can speak obviously very intelligent about the Boston Police Department and how the city here works. Right. And it is required for public safety on the roadway for any construction job that's going on per permit and through ordinance of the city of Boston.
I apologize.
I was going to say, I think that sometimes a misconception about what we're doing on the street, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. Obviously, his cell phones were everywhere, and yet you see that police officer who might be talking to the crew about how they're going to move the construction vehicle, sometimes can be deemed as though the officer isn't paying attention to what's going on, or the great picture of the officer sipping a cup of coffee on the 2 seconds he turns his back. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're there for public safety, and that's the main reason we're there.
Yawu, we have talked before about what might happen with Mayor Wu in the next election cycle. I'm curious about what you think the politics of this contract that she reached with the BPPA are going to be. Is it going to open her up to criticism from people on the left, for example, who are going to say, you didn't push hard enough, you didn't get reforms in this new deal with the BPPA that we wanted you to get? Is that a possibility? I
think, yeah, certainly in the since the George Floyd incident in 2020, there has been a push nationwide for police reform, and in Boston, a lot of people have said they want to see greater investment in crime prevention, and people believe the way to do that is to shrink the police budget and dedicate some of those resources to, strategies like the street workers program, which is proven to, has been proven in the past to reduce crime, to prevent crime. What we've seen in the last 20 years is that the violent crime rate in Boston has gone down by half, but the number of police officers is, still staying steady, about 2,000. Why are we spending so much on our police department? Why is overtime growing when violent crime is down, when crime in all categories is declining, not just in Boston but nationwide? But to see the crime rate cut in half and the level of policing and police spending continuously going up, I think that's what a lot of people were concerned about.
You posed a big question there. I want to give you about 25 seconds to answer it. Yawu says violent crime is down, half what it used to be. Why is the staffing level the same? Why is overtime going up? What's the answer?
Yeah, and as you see me take a quick note, I do that throughout, so I hope that's okay. So first off, the crime level is definitely down in the last 20 years. As you know, I'm going on my 30th year, born and raised in Boston. It's been a tremendous turnaround. However, your facts may be skewed or incorrect for who's ever given them to you. I came on in 1994. At that point in time, we had roughly 2,000 uniformed men and women answering the calls for service. We are down to about 1,550. I've been all over the media for the past few years beating that drum. That's one of the contributing factors to why the overtime rate and the overtime budget in the department continues to skyrocket. We just don't have enough police officers on the street.
That's an argument I know the council president's been making. So.
Yes.
Yeah, sneak one more thing in really fast, then we got to wrap it up.
Please. Actually, that's great. I touched the overtime.
We'll leave it there for now and take a crack at continuing the convo
Sure.
down the road. Larry Calderone, Yawu Miller, thank you both for being here and talking this stuff through.
Thank you very much.